Dover Samuels is in his 80s now, but the trauma of being beaten for speaking te reo Māori at school still fills him with anger and pain.
We used to get on our horse, the 3 or 4 of us, and go through the bush, bare feet, no shoes. Shoes was unheard of. And when we got to the gate, we got off our horses and we were met by the teacher. And the teacher made very clear, leave your language behind, leave your culture behind, and of course, leave your horse behind. You come in here to learn English. And if you speak your reo in the school grounds, right, you'll be strapped and you'll be caned. You'll be punished.
Dover attended the Whakarara native school at Matauri Bay in the 1940s.
Well, if you have a look at the interpretation of native and you have a look at the way that it has been described and interpreted over the years, native has got a connotation of uncivilized people, right? And that's the overtones of it. And the policy went along with that. Very clearly, there was an agenda here.
The name has changed, but the school still stands today.
The gate is still here. There's a notice there. It reminds me of the notice that used to be on the old gate that was made out of tea tree at Manuka. Not as flash as this one. But instead of saying a gate closed at all times, it says you're not allowed to speak Māori at all times.
There's not a lot of happy memories here for the former Labour Minister, just sadness at how he and his classmates were treated.
This original photo of the buildings in the school when I went to school, there would be only 1 or 2 of us that are still alive. And they were the pioneers. They were the ones really that took the brunt of the Crown's brutality upon that generation.
And he believes that removing te reo was all part of a wider plan to brutally colonise the country.
That was the beginning of a whole sequence of policies that attempted to disempower a Māori nation. Start from the youth, from the youngest first.
Matua, you know, even trying to contemplate strapping a 5 or a 6-year-old these days, you know, it's just not even in our understanding anymore. But as a 5 or 6-year-old who was strapped for speaking te reo Māori, what was that like for you?
We actually began to accept it as the norm, is that we were doing something wrong. Anybody will dob you in. Not necessarily that the teacher can hear you speaking it himself or herself, but some of us were encouraged to dob others in. We just come out and say, oh, sir, he's speaking. Come to the front, right, bend over, and this cane had come out and whack. When you get a teacher, and I remember very 6 foot, swinging this, and you're bending over as a young child, and you see the bruising and sometimes the blood. I mean, you couldn't get away from it. And a lot of the swings went below the shorts and landed on your legs, on the back of your legs. And the welts were very obvious,
For the children of Matauri Bay School today,
I'm going to share with you a little story.
It's hard to imagine what it was like in the 1940s.
When we came in through that gate, we were told by the teacher, do not speak Māori in this school. If you speak Māori, you're going to get this. Now, this is called a kareo. And when he hear you speaking Māori, come out, you bend over, and you get bang. And with the girls too, no difference.
In 2015, Dover Samuels made a submission to the Waitangi Tribunal on behalf of all Ngāpuhi children caned at school for speaking te reo, asking for an apology, but none has been formally offered.
I've heard people say, well, we were already behind the bike shed and down. Well, hang on, right? You didn't get brutalised and caned for speaking your reo. You know, I can sort of understand that if in fact you're a naughty boy and I like becoming, you're going to discipline. And here we are, as young Māori children, part of the native school, being brutalised and whipped for no other reason but speaking our reo rangatira.
You've been waiting for 70 odd years for an apology. Were you hopeful that it would come?
I believe that a sincere apology and the recognition of the injustice by the Crown on what happened to that generation, to me, is not genuine and not complete if it doesn't actually understand the beginning of the journey.
Tell me about the letters that you wrote to politicians. What did you say in them and what were you hoping for?
Well, it was to remind my colleagues in the government, and especially the Māori caucus, that there was a significant claim before the tribunal, not by me, but by their tupuna, and by those who actually began the journey.
And what has the response been?
Well, the response is that I'm talking to you, me. And I know that there's been a lot of agendas, but I want to bring the consciousness of our politicians and our representatives back to the injustice that was deliberately put into place by the Crown. But there has been no recognition. People may think that apologies are now coming so fast that they become throwaway apologies. I would hope that the apology that the Māori nation would get, and that our tupuna and that our people who deserve, that are no longer here to be able to hear physically an apology, I think it should come from the throne. That's where the origins of it should begin.
Dover Samuels is now 82, a kaumātua and a warrior who has fought to protect te reo Māori, a mantle he now passes to our rangatahi.
I am inspired by this new generation and by the new consciousness awakening about the value of te reo Māori and the need to ensure that it is enshrined within our society.
You are an inspiration, Matua, because while they tried to beat te reo out of you, you retained your reo, you used your reo, and you became a teacher, and you've passed your reo on to so many generations now. Hoi noi mihi ana ki a koe.
So the culture, the language, and who you are as a Māori must remain intrinsic in your wairua, in your spirit. Otherwise, you lose who you are.
Just to finish, Matua, I mean, what would an apology mean for you?
Without it, we don't honour those who really were the trailblazers in terms of standing up for te reo and, quite frankly, brutalised because that was the only offence they committed at an institution that was supposed to protect young children.
This is where it began. Where it will end, I'm confident that the next generation, or even this generation now, are bringing about changes that are going to be irreversible. And that is the value of te reo Māori, and that is the treasure that we have as a nation.
Ko te reo te Māori o te mana Māori.